Well, earlier this morning, 3 Islamist terrorist attacks claimed the lives of some 53 people. That number is still rising as these situations are very fluid. In France, 1 man was decapitated. In Tunisia, at least 37 people were slaughtered at a beach resort while they were tanning. And in Kuwait, there was an explosion at a mosque that took the lives of 25 people. ISIS has claimed responsibility, Anthony, who, thank you for joining me, for the attack in Kuwait, though all 3 of these situations seem to reek of an Islamist, ISIS-inspired terrorist attack.
Particularly because in the France attack, there were flags and inscriptions lying around that seemed to suggest there was some ISIS affiliation or at least fanboy antics.
Not to mention the decapitation of the one individual.
Which is, of course, a hallmark of the Islamic State. And we also know that one Islamic State spokesperson did say, hey, Ramadan's coming up, let's up your killings. What better way to celebrate your beloved religion than to kill a bunch of people in the name of it? So
well, precisely.
They love Ramadan for that purpose.
And precisely, they're also celebrating, of course, the 1-year declaration of the caliphate. Are they not? So last week, as you say, a spokesperson came out, called for these types of attacks, these types of ISIS-inspired attacks. We have yet to see if there's sort of a link between all 3 of them, but it doesn't, seems like not a coincidence.
One of the reasons why I try to catch myself and never say ISIS anymore and only say Islamic State is because a year ago, they begged of us, please stop saying it, because we've gone global. We are taking on the world. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi said, this is it. I'm becoming the leader of the world, of the entire Ummah and everyone else who won't subject to the Ummah. So when you look at the map, you see that these three attacks are in some proximity to each other, but it makes total sense, consistent with the Islamic State's view of wanting to go after really any country that is not following their views, anything that they can get within their reach.
Inevitably, there will be those that come out and say, oh, Canada, we don't have to worry. We're sheltered from all of this. As we know, there was an attack on Parliament Hill late last year. What do you say to those folks?
Well, I say the whole fact that Islamic State folks have come forward and said you need to keep upping your attacks on Western targets. Petty Warrant Officer Patrice Vincent in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, Quebec, was killed by someone driving a car into him. One Islamic State publication said, hey, if you can't get your hands on a bomb or a gun or a knife, just ram your car into people. Sure, they are trying to influence attacks here. They're not necessarily directly financing or coordinating them, but they say, do X. And then people hear, do situation X. So they are very much attacking Canada with intent and with success.
When you consider what happened in Kuwait and in Tunisia, but in Kuwait in particular, a Shiite mosque was blown up, I think it's a reminder that even Muslims aren't immune to the threat of Islamist terrorism. Would you agree?
Well, exactly. They want their own particular radical Sunni interpretation to be embraced by everyone, so Shiites, definitely not safe. Kurds, Ismailis, anybody in the region, not safe unless you have their particular interpretation of Islam.
Now, of course, I would be remiss to not bring up Justin Trudeau's comments from earlier this week. In an interview on CBC with Terry Malevsky, he said that were he to become the next prime minister, of course, he would end the mission, the CF-18 mission in Iraq. He would pull our troops out and he would reduce our mission to strictly humanitarian aid. Your take?
Justin Trudeau is articulating the most epic hug-a-thug policy idea I've ever really heard, because he also said in that interview that diplomacy is one of the things we have to look at now. Diplomacy, Marissa, decapitating people, killing dozens of tourists on a beach in Tunisia. What ISIS did the other week, where they put guys in a cage, drowned them, and put explosives to their neck while they were drowning them.
Yeah.
These are not guys who you can have a cup of tea with and find a middle ground. They're not freedom fighter-style terrorists who will completely stop doing their terror if you just, give them this piece of land or release 10 of their prisoners. These are guys who will not stop until you have joined them. We have not seen anything like this since Nazi Germany.
I think one of the more startling things Justin Trudeau said in that interview is this, and I'll quote him. He said, "We learned through the first Iraq war what happens when Western troops get involved in combat, and they don't necessarily, whether it's Libya, whether it's Iraq, doesn't necessarily lead to the kinds of outcomes people would responsibly like to see." So now, not only is he saying Canada should reduce its mission to strictly humanitarian aid, but he's actually saying he doesn't support French, British, he doesn't support the Obama-led coalition.
And the problem with that right now is that this is not just a very isolated sectarian struggle where you can say, oh, the U.S. is poking their nose where they don't belong anymore. And I think there are some cases where that analysis and critique definitely applies. In this situation, the very fact that they're not sticking to the home turf, they're going to any country they can, and they're trying to inspire attacks in absolutely any country they can, proves that, of course, everybody in the world has a stake in this because they want to mess with everybody in the world.
We're a few months away from the election. As you know, you and I both know, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers know, polls fluctuate. They fluctuate a lot. The latest poll numbers have Justin Trudeau and Stephen Harper effectively tied. What do you think this says?
Yeah, effectively tied in second place, and the NDP with a relatively healthy first place. I think the main takeaway from this is that people have realized that Justin Trudeau is not a very serious man in terms of someone who thinks about policy and politics, and Thomas Mulcair, I think rightfully so, to his credit, has replaced Justin Trudeau as the preferred alternative for the people out there who don't want to vote Conservative.
But it's important to remind people that Justin Trudeau's position and Tom Mulcair's position are effectively the same. They've both said they would pull out of Iraq. They both said that it should be strictly humanitarian aid. Why do people seem to criticize Justin Trudeau more than Tom Mulcair?
Well, because he does it in a flakier manner, for starters. And I do think that actually matters, because when you sit down and think about it, I probably feel a lot safer if I had to flip a coin between Justin Trudeau being Prime Minister and Thomas Mulcair. I just feel safer with Mulcair at the helm because he's at least consistent in what he says, and you feel that he's not just throwing random darts at a board and hoping one of them sticks.
All right. Well, great chatting with you. Thanks, Furey.
You too.